Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us again to the Plymouth Historical Society's initiative, Memories of Plymouth. It's an opportunity for us to have people from the area interviewed as to their stories, their thoughts, their memories of Plymouth. Some of these folks worked here, were born here, socialized here. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce to you two folks that we're interviewing, Mr. and Mrs. Estes, with a smile. This is Paul and Gigi Estes. So thank you both for coming in today. It's my pleasure.
Our pleasure.
It's our pleasure, yes.
We have a series of questions for you today. The first few are just about yourselves, so the audience gets to know you. There's a lot of people in town who do know you, but just in case there's that one person who may not. So we're going to start off with a couple of easy ones. If you would state your names, full names, given names.
Paul Estes, born in Maine, actually, Lewiston, Maine.
Lewiston.
But we came to Plymouth in 1971.
1971.
And I'm Gisela Estes, and I was my maiden name is Behrendt, and Gisela was a very popular name at the time I was born, and so my mother liked the name and gave it to me.
And most people, it's okay if I call you Gigi.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
That sounds great. You were born in Lewiston, Paul?
Yes, I was.
What date?
But
What date? Can you remember when you were born?
May 2nd, 1937.
1937.
So I was born in Lewiston, but I grew up in Auburn on the other side of the Androscoggin River, which back then was one of the smelliest rivers in the country.
Due to
the paper mills and the textile mills upstream that dumped all their toxic waste into the river. We could smell it all the way to our house, a whole mile away.
So for us that grew up in Plymouth, that's a familiar smell from the Pemigewasset, but led up to the Lincoln pulp mills as well.
Yes,
Interesting.
I've heard
Interesting. Gigi, where were you born, please?
I was born in a town called Allenstein, actually a city, and that was in East Prussia, and but we moved to a city called Rassenburg in East Prussia. And East Prussia is one of the four states in Germany that are lost to Germany since the end of the war. And so it's right next to Lithuania, the most eastern part of Germany. And we had to flee from the Russians in 1944, 45, and we were lucky that we made it to what later became West Germany.
That sounds like another story that we should share with our audience sometime.
It was a long trek. And
when the two of you moved here in 71, did you have children at the time?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Would you share a little bit about your children?
We had a boy and a girl, and they were pretty young at the time. How old were they?
Heide was 7 and Christopher was 5.
Right, that's
and
right.
Heide was
So
born in Germany and was 6 months old when we came over here. And Christopher was born in Massachusetts.
So they were educated primarily in the Plymouth schools, elementary,
Yes.
middle school?
Yes.
Mainly.
Yes.
Haida started school in Dover, New Hampshire, kindergarten, and then we moved to Plymouth.
So you're in Dover. Is there a reason for being in Dover that I can ask?
I was going to University of New Hampshire, and so we lived in Dover because that was less expensive to get a place to live than in Durham itself.
Now, you're going to UNH. Is this for your undergraduate degree?
For my PhD.
For your terminal degree. When did you finish there?
1972.
1972. So there's a little bit of a delay there.
Oh, yes.
You've moved to Plymouth in 71, but you finished your education down there.
Yeah, I was still finishing up my thesis, and I finished it up after we got to Plymouth.
All right.
And when I finally finished, I got a note. I sent a note to Harold Hyde,
President Harold Hyde.
President Harold Hyde, letting him know that I had finally finished my degree. And then I got a note back from his secretary, Bertha Close, I think her name was.
Yes.
I think you're right.
Yes, yes.
And I got a note from her congratulating me and somehow telling me, I forget what she told me, but anyway, I got a response from her acknowledging my receipt of my degree.
That's really nice. Question I would have, do you still have the note? Is this something that you would have kept? I'm kidding, but it seems like
Probably somewhere in the house.
if we could find it. Did you anticipate staying at Plymouth?
No, we thought, well, Plymouth isn't our first choice. Our first choice was Rhode Island, actually, and we somehow didn't really want to stay in Plymouth. It didn't impress us on first viewing. We remembered coming to campus and seeing all that asphalt, and realizing this is not a very beautiful campus. Well, it has become beautiful, but back then it wasn't. So we didn't really plan on staying. We thought we'll stay 3 years and then move on. Well, we're still here.
And
47
why are you
years.
still here after decades?
Well,
What drew you in?
well, there are two reasons. First of all, we didn't want our children to change schools again. And the big reason, of course, is we fell in love with the area. Paul had been a graduate student at Brown University, and we loved the area, and it would have been sailing and playing tennis and biking down there. And so up here, it changed to skiing and hiking, and we are just, we love it.
We love the mountains.
We've grown roots. And especially for me, since in Germany, I never felt I had a home. It was just a place to live. And when we were here, after 15 years, we went on a sabbatical to München, Germany, and I came back home. I'm still feeling emotional about it. It was home, you know. For the first time in my life, I had the feeling it was home.
I've heard that from so many people.
Yep.
Yeah, you come to our small town and you do fall in love with it, be it the surroundings, the scenery that we have, the opportunities that are here as well.
And the people.
Thank you, the people.
The people, yes.
For the audience, what background do you have in education? You've been at Plymouth State for how many years prior to retirement?
Well, my education was, I got a PhD in mathematics
Mathematics.
at UNH. So I was hired to teach mathematics, since that was my specialty, and I've loved it. I've had a lot of wonderful students who I still stay in touch with, many of them, and so it's been good. It's been a wonderful place to retire.
Yes. And my degree is from Germany in early childhood. And I first worked in German institutions, and then I found a job teaching German in one of the American military dependent schools. And I taught German in kindergarten, first and second grade. And it was just wonderful. Those kids, they just loved learning. And then when I came over here, I thought I would do that over here. Little did I know that American children did not learn foreign languages. So I thought, well, you know, there's no German at the high school, but I'll get a degree in this country, and I introduced German. So I took a methods course from Mady Barrett. And then Bill Barrett, who was teaching German, was going on sabbatical. She gave me a call, and she asked me to teach at the college level. I still remember my legs starting to shake. And I said, Mady, I can't do that. And she says, oh, yes, you can. and that's, I was teaching there for one semester, and then there was a new person coming back, and I forget his name, but he didn't last very long. And so then I was rehired, and they kept hiring me, even though I didn't have a PhD, but of course it was to their advantage, because the pay was accordingly.
I'm trying to think, would Mady have been a dean at that time, or would she have been our interim president at the time?
No, she was the department chair.
Department chair.
Of the foreign language department, and she was wonderful.
What languages would we have prior to German being introduced?
Well, the three languages taught at Plymouth State were German, Spanish, and French. And then we had a French-Canadian program. And before that, I had been asked to be a substitute teacher at the Plymouth public schools. And that was Sherman, his first name, the
Sherman Ramsey? No.
Sherman Ramsey, yes. And their daughter was our daughter's friend. And so I had been volunteering at the school, and so they knew me, and they asked me to come in, and they got special permission from the state because I wasn't state certified here. And I remember he asked me to teach at the high school level, and I was so scared. And I would be standing in front of the door and take deep breaths, open the door, and walk in with all the confidence I could muster. And I learned how to fake confidence. And that has served me well.
I think we all do that every once in a while.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking about the first year teaching, and you've implied that already. What was your first year like at Plymouth, Paul? What was your first year like? What subject matter were you teaching? The size of the school, the number of faculty?
The size of the school, a couple of thousand. And I was teaching statistics. That wasn't my specialty, but I was asked to do that since that's where the demand was. All the business majors and education majors needed statistics, so they needed many sections of statistics. So I taught that quite a bit actually, until I was able to teach some of the courses that I would prefer to teach, like calculus, differential equations, and then I was able to enjoy my teaching more because I was teaching courses I really liked a lot. I had the math majors who were top students, and I had the meteorology majors who were top students because they, for their program, had to take the full calculus sequence. So their math skills were every bit as good as the math majors. So I had all the best math students in class. So that was wonderful.
Did you feel they wanted to be there? They were excited to be there?
Yes, they were.
That's great.
They were. They were good students, and they were enjoying their learning. Yes, they were.
When you came, can you guesstimate the number of faculty within your department?
9.
9.
We had 9 faculty members in the math department, of whom Barbara Dearborn was one of them, and she died shortly after that. There was me, there was Barbara, Enid Burrows, Dick Evans, Bill Roberts, Keith Furland.
Wow. Good memory. Good memory. Names that people can remember still. Your first year?
1977 for one semester. And we were a smaller department. It was Virginia Garlitz, Roger Tunnell, Hans Suskind, Mady Barrett, of course, and George Malouf, and I. Yes, yeah.
And when you were at the high school, what level would you be teaching?
Everything.
First years, second years, third years?
Well, just everything. They.
You had it all.
At first they had me come to teach at the elementary school, and then Sherb Ramsey asked me whether I would come in for the art teacher, and that would be elementary and high school. And he said, "Oh, you won't have a problem. They have projects to do." And then he called me for other things, for English and science and math, and one point I told him, if you think that all Germans are great scientists, that's not quite true. But anyway, it was very, very interesting. I tried to do what was on the lesson plan, and it was easy in the lower classes. In the freshman class, discipline was the biggest problem, and I had to go and be really strong. And after a few times, they knew they couldn't horse around with me, and then I could actually do some teaching. But in almost every class, they always asked me about my background, and so I told them, and I figured, okay, at this point, they probably learn more from what I'm telling them than what's in the lesson plan. And in the upper classes, the math and the science classes, I told them right away, I said, I've forgotten a lot of these things. You know more than I do. You do your work, and if you need some help, we'll ask one of the other students to go to the board and do that. And it worked.
Did I hear you correctly when you were teaching the young children, first, second, third, fourth graders, it was German?
In Germany, yes. Kindergarten, first and second grade. Yes.
Very nice, very nice.
And they loved it, and I did too.
If you were proud of something within your professional life, what might it be? What might it be?
Getting my PhD.
While having a family, having children?
Oh yeah, well them too, of course.
No, I'm just thinking all at the same time.
Right.
Well, yes and
that
no.
that was hard. Yes.
Yeah, because our children were small when I was finishing up.
Okay.
And I wasn't too healthy. I was home. I was not working. So my major job was trying to save money, try to make it. And it worked. And so professionally, I think my proudest accomplishment is the success of my students. And the students that went abroad, I had a wonderful program of sending students abroad. And one of my students, Mary Beth Bentwood, a local girl, got an internship with Mercedes in Germany.
John Bentwood's daughter.
Yes,
Okay.
and what they did, what the kids, the students, how they came and got enthusiastic about German, most of them, was just most wonderful. And it was intensive, it was German only, and so there was a lot of acting. I mean, I had to be really well prepared and not use words that they hadn't introduced in some way. And so actually I said I acted my classes.
Do you think because of your approach to teaching, your enthusiasm, knowledge, they ended up pursuing traveling, learning the language, embracing themselves more in the language or the opportunities that might come their way?
I think so, yes. I had one student who came to me very excited after the first semester. She had worked in Waterville Valley, and the German consul was one of her clients when she was waitressing, and she spoke German with him, and he did not believe that she had only one semester of German.
Wow. Wow.
I was a stickler for pronunciation.
Thank you for doing that. That's nice. That's nice.
It was wonderful.
Paul, we have something here. I think the audience can see what it is. And when we were chatting before, you talked about how proud you were.
My students, when I was retiring, they presented me with this distinguished teacher award. So I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
And you have, let's see, you've been retired for how long? 2001.
I started retiring in 2006, but I did that slowly. I started retiring then, and at that time, Plymouth State College then offered what they called a faculty transition plan, whereby you could go on half-time and half-salary for a couple of years. I thought, that's a good plan, so I opted for it. But then even after I spent those 2 years doing it, I still didn't feel ready to retire because I was still enjoying my teaching so much. I had so many good students, I still loved it, so I just kept on going for a while as a part-timer.
What a wonderful way to think about and to follow through in a full retirement eventually. That is nice. That must be very For a lot of people, if we interviewed them, that must be one of the hardest things they have to think about. Working all the time, all of a sudden you have all this free time on your hand,
Yeah.
and then when you love what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great program, a
Yes.
great program.
And at the end of my career at Plymouth State, I had 5 years of the Kinder lernen Deutsch program.
Say that one more time.
Kinder lernen Deutsch, children learn German. And that was an intensive program for teachers of German to learn how to do that method in their classes. And so I had 3 teachers coming up, and that was supported by the German government through the Goethe Institute in Boston. And we had a model class that the teacher taught, and then with local children. And then we had, for every 2 teachers, we had classes also. So a lot of local children came to those lessons, and I still, to this day, some of the parents and some of the students then are telling me how much fun it was. And
how visionary. How visionary
Yes,
it was.
yep.
Great opportunity.
yes,
And we've spoken to a few people over time in the, I want to say it was in the 60s, there were a few professors on campus that brought programs to the town's kids.
yes,
And this is just the
Yep.
same thing. Wonderful.
Right.
Just
Yes.
wonderful.
yep.
That's great. We're going to switch gears just a tad. We're going to move into the town of. You've been here for how many decades?
We moved here in 1971.
47 years on August 18th.
There we go.
We moved in with a car and U-Haul, got gas downtown on Main Street, and were asked, "Are you moving into the Nelson's house?"
The Nelson's house
Yes.
The house owned by Carl and Beulah
Beulah
Nelson,
But
on Maple Street.
you know, it's not very often that people come in with all that
which
stuff.
we bought. We're still in that same house. We're still in our starter home.
We've added on a little bit and made some improvements.
We've improved it considerably.
Yes,
That's great.
yep.
It had an
Yes.
old back porch that had since been torn down,
The side porch
Yeah.
didn't have a back porch.
a side porch, and
Yes.
that's long gone. And we had an addition built, so it's a considerably improved house over what it was.
And we had insulation blown in because there was no insulation, and the first few winters were miserable.
My hand is over my mouth on that one.
And no wood stove at that time.
If we had your family members and you were chatting with them right now, your children were here, and if you were talking about memories of your life and your times in Plymouth, what might some of them be? I can give you topics to think about, but does anything come to your mind right now? When you think back about your 50 years in Plymouth, are there highlights? Things that you still remember today because of?
Being together with our friends and their children, and a lot of it was hiking. And of course, Maple Street was faculty road in those days. You know, the Switzers and Madeline and what was his name, Tatara.
Walter.
Walter Tatara and the Bounce there now, and of course the Blakes.
Lester and Lorraine Blake lived across the street from us.
And Lauren Blake, being the president's secretary, we always said she ran the college.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard that.
Oh, yes.
She was good. They were wonderful.
Oh, that's
Yes,
great.
they were.
Yes, yeah.
That's a good street to be on for children.
Oh, yes, yes. And so,
I'm trying to remember, would they have been able to walk to school?
oh, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no reason not to walk to school. There was no bad weather. There would have been only bad clothing.
It's a great line.
Yes.
Do you remember, I think the other day when we were chatting, we were talking about the weather. Is there anything that comes to mind? If I said to you, Plymouth weather, what comes to your mind?
Climate change.
It was pretty cold most in the winters, of course. It was cold.
Yes.
A lot of snow. We had tons of snow. So we skied.
Yeah.
What type of skiing do you do? Downhill,
Well,
cross country?
yes,
We used to do downhill, And we had decided to give it up because of the expense. And so when Paul had his interview up here, and I remember I was in the hospital, and he came and he showed me all the things. And I said to him, if we move there, you won't be able to keep me from skiing. And he said, yes, I know, and that's one reason not to go there. But then I made sure that our children were skiing, because that's what all their friends did. Mm. And then cross-country skiing became came the thing to do. And with my money that I earned, some of my money that I earned from substitute teaching, I bought myself my first cross-country ski equipment. Very nice. And Art Bourgeois and some of the other people were really active in promoting it and organizing races, and I loved it. I loved it.
It sounds like you're very active people.
And Tenny Mountain was in operation,
yes.
So we could go to ski there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I first time taught at Plymouth State, then I could afford season tickets for our children, so they could ski regularly.
Plus, the campus had a program out there. We were teaching classes out there. They could drive out there and take some downhill skiing lessons.
Not the children at that time.
The college students.
Yes,
college students.
Right,
yeah.
right,
yeah.
yes, yeah. So we went on the free day for faculty and families, and
Sam Hall ran it.
That's right.
That name ring a bell.
It does. Who was his colleague who purchased it with him? French.
Murphy?
French.
Oh.
Yeah, the two of them were co-owners.
Yes.
Yes, that's
okay.
right, way back when.
Oh, okay,
Sam Hall.
Yeah. Sam Hall,
It
yes.
was a great family place to go.
It was.
Yes.
It was
Oh,
nice.
yes. And during vacation...
Kevin French? No.
During vacation, one parent would pick up all the kids with the station wagon. The whole car would be full, no seat belts or anything like that, and they would sit in the back and take them out, and then some other parent would pick them up in the afternoon.
That's neat. That's really
And
neat.
they were well taken care of. There was this Mr. Ober from Ashland who was always after them and scolding them if they did something wrong.
Outside of skiing, is there another physical activity that you've been doing?
Hiking.
Hiking.
Oh, we hiked all the 4,000 footers, every one of them.
In New England.
Right.
And then I did them all over in the winter. And then now I'm trying to do them over again in my 70s.
When you hike, are you always a twosome? Do you go with friends?
We're a twosome, but also we go with friends.
And with our children when they were younger.
Yeah.
And, it would be a nice day on a Saturday or Sunday. And when we get up and says, okay, we're going on a hike. And when they were a little older, that didn't work anymore. I want to do this. So we told them beforehand, okay, if it's a nice day, we're doing a hike, you have no choice, but you can invite a friend.
Oh, that's nice.
And
That's
that
nice.
worked. Yes.
Well, it looks like with what I'm seeing in front of me right now, you've been very active doing some activities. Would
Yes.
you just share what some of them are?
Well, we got into racing. And I did my first race. That was a fundraiser for the Pemmican Choral Society, 5 kilometers. And I had been running regularly about 2 to 3 kilometers, and I didn't know whether I could do it. No, it wasn't 5, it was 5 miles, and I had done 3 miles and 5 kilometers. And Jim Church.
Dick Church.
Dick Church.
Oh,
Dick Church. Do you remember Dick Church?
Yeah, professor of the college.
Yes.
He said to me, if you can always run twice as much in a race as you practice. And he was my mentor in all the physical activities. He was wonderful. And he always encouraged me to do more and do this. And then I found out about the Mount Washington Road Race. And because I had been so ill for so many years, and I wanted to do it. And he says, you can. And I said, I don't know. Oh, yes, you can. And so I wanted to do before I turned 50, and I did it the first time after I had turned 49. So
How long is that race?
it's only 7.6 miles, but it's 4,000 feet elevation gain. It's not the race that's the hard part, it's the training for it.
Yeah, it starts at Pinkham Notch, and it goes up to the summit of Mount Washington, so it's quite an elevation gain.
And he's done it once also.
Yeah, I've done it once,
Wow.
and it's a fun thing to do.
How long would it typically take you to?
Well, the cutoff is 3 hours, then the clock stops. And the first few times I've done it a little over 2 hours. Unfortunately, I never beat that 2 hour. And then several years ago, I did it in 2 hours and about 34 minutes. And then last year, I did it in 2 hours and I think 24 minutes or something.
Do they
like
run
that.
this race regardless of what the weather?
Yes. And there was one time that the weather was so bad, it was sleeting on the top. We only went to the halfway and then we had to walk down on our own because it was not safe for the cars or for the volunteers.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, they didn't talk about the runners, you know.
I don't mean to put a plug in for
Yes.
this race, but is this open to all ages?
Yes.
Oh yes.
So we see little children as well as?
No little children. It's too
Young adults.
difficult. Yeah, yeah. So I don't think it goes by lottery, and they only take 1,000 people. But when you place, you don't have to go through the lottery. You get an automatic place.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is there something here that you want to pull out just for now? Maybe we should save
Well,
a
this
few
is-
for later.
Yeah, this is my Mount Washington, one of my Washington medals, and these are the ones I'm really proud of. And this is one when I did a ski race, Brenton Woods, Great Glen to Brenton Woods, which is 50 kilometers, but I only did half. I only did 25, and I was doing so well. It was so wonderful. And this was my first ski race, big ski race I had done, and I was standing there, and there was my name, and all the people, you know, they were reading it. Who's that person? Gisela, of course I didn't know how to pronounce it. You know, so. And then I had planned to do the 50 one the year after, but that was last year they held it because there wasn't enough snow anymore. And on the north side, the west wind you would ski around the north side, the west wind would just blow off all the snow, so they just couldn't do it anymore. Let's see whether it was in 2005, that was the last time they did that race.
I'm thinking when you came to now, let's talk a little bit about the changes that you have seen throughout the town. We know what changes happened with the college, the population got much bigger, more faculty members, but what changes can you recall about the town itself? From the
Well,
50
Tenny
years?
Mountain Highway. Tenny Mountain Highway was woods and fields. And we used to ride our bikes out there with our children. And there's no way I would even now go out with my bike because I don't think it's safe to cross the road. It's safe to ride on either way, but there's no way to cross the road. There's no light for walkers or bikers. And so I don't dare go out there, and I miss it. Because I like to go out to the cemeteries by Fairgrounds Road, and then come back the other way, but I haven't done it. So.
Main Street still looks the same, more or less. The same stores are still there. Well, not all, but Chase Street Market, which was Volpe's. Rand's, of course, that's still there. It's been there forever.
Yes.
And Steve Rand, his uncle Watt, and
His father.
he was there, and
His dad.
Bob. And yeah, we remember all the Rands, and there was down the street that supermarket. Well, no, it wasn't a supermarket.
It was originally.
Yes, First National.
First National.
First National.
First
Well,
National.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was First National.
Yeah.
That was the only
It was
supermarket.
not called a supermarket. It was just a grocery store.
Well, a little bigger one. It was a national chain, of course.
Well, yes, it
So-
was. Yeah.
But it also had some parking.
Yes.
It did,
And that
which
was
good.
important.
Right.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
important. Yeah. And that's where Rite Aid is today.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that little store was, Hammond.
There was
Lowly Hammond had that little
There was a gift shop down there.
gift
am I
shop.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think I remember that between First National, this, and then Rite Aid. 1, 2, 3.
And
Yeah.
before she opened it, I'm one of the original members of the Pemmican Choral Society, and several of our fundraisers was the House of Horror for Halloween. We would be dressed up there and charge money for the kids to come through there.
That is cute.
And I remember I was a Jack the Ripper's victim at one point, so I'd be standing there, with that knife on my throat.
That's great.
So, and then Loli bought that and had that little gift, the berries.
The berries.
Yes.
You're
yes.
good. You're very good.
And
Taking me
she,
back.
she had these sandwich boards, and I remember Steve Switzer and our son Christopher, they would be going downtown with the sandwich
That's
boards.
cute. That is cute.
Yes.
Great marketing. Great
Right,
marketing.
right. Yes, yeah.
In the town of Plymouth, over your years, have there been people that really affected you? Something they might have said to you, did something for you, and you've never forgotten it? Could be a faculty member, it could be a townsperson.
Well, I remember when at the memorial service for Bob O'Neill, her German name is Dagmar, Mary Beth Bentwood, came up to me with tears in her eyes, and she said that she never thanked Bob O'Neill for what he had done for her as a student, and she wanted to come and tell me before it's too late. And she said, I raised the bar high. I believed that she could do it, and she did things that she never believed she could do on her own.
How touching.
Yes,
How touching.
yes.
Yeah,
I'm
meant a lot.
still getting teary when I think about her. She was one of my
Students.
many students, and I'm still in contact with some of them too.
Paul, is there somebody that affected you, supported you? You can pass. You can pass.
Yeah, not so much here in Plymouth. Well, Ed Wixson, of course, was my first department chairman. So he basically sort of hired me along with Harold Hyde. So it's through Ed that I got my first teaching assignments, teaching statistics. And we're still in touch with the Wixons.
That's great.
Ed, at that time, was married to Rowena. And I remember he took me on a ride on a snowmobile. The first and only time I've ever been on a snowmobile.
I don't know if I dare ask. Did it?
I didn't fall off.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I stayed on. And but that was kind of exciting.
Since you said Ed Wixson College, was there somebody in your background, in your family, that meant a great deal to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Who might it be?
My grandfather was the most important guy in my life. He's the one who set the standards for me and everybody else in the family.
How so?
He was a very generous person. Anybody in need, he would help out. He helped. I mean, and there were lots of people in need, and he did so much for so many people.
Nice, nice.
Mm.
Next question, if we can.
For me, it was both my mother and my grandmother, and I mean the women in Germany during and after the war was just incredible, and so we had 2 rooms after the war. At the end of the war, and it was my grandmother and my mother, and I was the oldest. I was 5 and a half. My sister was 4. My little baby brother was 2.5, and then the toddler and the youngest one was born. We got to this village on January 31st, 1945, and my aunt lived there. We actually lived with her at first. And my mother was very pregnant, and so she went to the next town, Helmstedt, that used to be the checkpoint later, because there was a hospital, and checked with the doctor 2 days later, and the doctor said, Frau Behrendt, you're going to stay here. Your baby is about to be born. And she says, no, I cannot. I have 3 other children. He would not let her go. And on February 4th, my baby brother was born. You know, and my father was still alive. He still knew he had another son. But then we didn't hear from him, and then he was missing. And in 1948, my mother found out that he fell in one of the last battles on the Western Front, May 19, 1945. And then she found out because a grave with his name was found eventually.
Wow.
I mean, everything was just in shambles. You know, there was.
So they actually had a stone for your father?
It was a wooden cross with his helmet on it.
Wow.
So.
Just, I have to think about that one. That takes me back a little bit. Wow.
Yep.
Let's see. Since you arrived, we've talked about something about the main street, stores that are still there. Some have come and gone. Do you remember a store, a company, an industry that you were excited about when it arrived in Plymouth? Conversely, if something left Plymouth, if a store closed, can you remember any of those as well? And if not,
Yes.
that's fine too.
Town and Campus.
Town and Campus.
When they came, that was wonderful, you know. And
There was a store that sold records, and Elvis Presley had just died, and she was a major Elvis fan. So I went to this store and bought her an Elvis record. And I remember there was a student working there who he gave me this funny look as if to say, now who's this old guy buying an Elvis record?
well, I met Elvis in Germany, so.
Oh, tell us the story.
It's too long a story to
Oh,
tell
it's
now.
not too long a story.
No, it's no.
He
no,
skated where we skated.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
my.
too. Yes, yeah, and
It was an open arena where anybody could come and skate?
Oh yes, it was a town. Was the town arena, the town of Bad Nauheim in Germany, and that was built for the American troops when they first came in, and then given over to the town of Bad Nauheim.
Elvis was stationed just a couple of towns south of where I was stationed.
Yeah.
And so some of the old sergeants knew him, they remembered him, and they said, you know, he was a good soldier. When he didn't try to get out of KP by paying somebody else to do it. He would pull KP, and he used his money. He was already well known at that time.
Sure.
He used his money to buy nice furniture for the company day room.
Yeah, and of course we all were crazy about Elvis.
I just have to shake your hand. Hit it.
Yes.
Yes.
You knew
Yes.
Elvis Presley.
Yes,
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's great. That is a great.
So anyway, the other thing about downtown, I think it's so much prettier now, with the wires underground and the trees, and then that little place with the flowers. And Paul used to stop there and let me out when I needed to get something. You know, we had to stop doing that. And I remember Steve Rand and I were standing in front of his store so many times, saying to each other, we should have trees here, you know, on these hot summer days. I said, you know, trees change the climate. And so there's one tree that's gone now, and I guess Mark Young was the one who always had a kitty when a new tree was needed. And I'm thinking, we've got to do something and get that tree back. And then, of course, we had the flowers there for a while in those big buckets. That was so nice. But the Ashland Garden Club and the women who did it, they said the merchants hadn't watered enough, and they just would not look very good after a while. So
We still had the common I look at the comment and I always
Oh,
smile.
yes.
Always smile.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's special. And I know there were many commons out there, but just the way ours was situated, the
Yes.
history behind the common, how it
Yeah.
came to be, etc.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's a nice comment.
Yes,
It's
it
beautiful.
is.
Yes. Yeah.
You shared with me that over the years you've had some students stay with you, live with you. Could you share a little bit of that, please? Paul?
Well, we had the American Field Service Exchange Service that was started at the Plymouth High School, and we hosted the first student, a student from Guatemala, Estuardo, and that was in 1979-80, and we are still in contact with him. And then we had a niece from Germany stay with us for a whole year. Then we hosted students from France for a summer, one student, and then he came back and his brother. And then my nephews from Germany. We called our place the International Inn for a while, you know. And then we finally said, okay, this is it. All the old ones may come back, but no more new ones. And then we did host my cousin's granddaughter from San Francisco. She lived with us for 2 years when she went to Plymouth State.
Beautiful.
And so
Beautiful.
that was much easier than high school kids.
We're closing down just a little bit now, but before we leave, a couple more. A question for you both. If we had a group of young adults sitting around us today, they're listening, and they have an opportunity to raise their hand and ask questions of you, and you would be able to share final information. What might you share with them? What's important for you to share with this younger generation? And that's a question to you both.
I would say, go and do what you love to do. Don't be afraid, and there's no failure. You only didn't get it right the first time, so try again. But go for your career. You need to have enough money to live a comfortable life, but you don't need any more. You don't go for the money. And because one thing I wanted to mention too was one of the things we are proud of, this is changing it, is that we are founders of the Star King Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in town, and that was in 1980. And we've grown, and I think we've become a very important social, besides the fellowship and the services, also social point in the town. You know, we are reaching out and trying to help.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
It's a local
What would you
area.
share with your audience that's in front of you right now?
If you go to Plymouth State and study there, study what you like, and hopefully it will be something you're good at. Like in my case, it was mathematics. I loved it. And so my students who I've had in my math classes, they've all done well. Well, not all. There were a few lazy ones. But I had so many good students.
That's great.
Some of the ones who I didn't think would be outstanding have become so.
It's wonderful.
And it's very rewarding.
That's why we get into teaching.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Yeah, it really is. There's a couple pictures here, and before we leave, quickly, if you could just share what the pictures are. Let's see. Yeah, is that Paul? Okay.
This one? This one? Okay, yes, this is at Arathusa Falls, hiking at Arathusa Falls. And it's Paul and myself, and with 3 students. One of them, Nate Malherin, who was a math minor, and then one of my German students, his German name is Wolfgang, I don't remember his real name, and his friend. And so we did a lot of hiking, not just with friends and families, but also with students.
That's nice. That's nice.
This is at graduation, or maybe it was the other event, convocation prior to graduation. These are 2 of my top students, a couple of math majors, and they came forward to have their pictures taken together with me, which I was delighted to have because this is so nice. Yeah, I can tell you their names.
It's on the back.
Their names are Joy Bowen and Jenny Judson. Convocation, May 2004.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
And
It's
then,
been my pleasure. I'm going to do this one more time.
Yes.
One more time. Go ahead, Gigi.
oh yeah, well, some of these are, of course, these are my medals that I got, and I already mentioned this one. These bowls, they're from the Craftsbury Marathon that I try to do every year. And the first prize is one of these handmade beautiful bowls, and I have 8 of them now. And then a few times there were some other things, but the bowls are my favorite ones. And then some of them for cross-country skiing, running, and these are from the triathlon, the Cannon Mountain Triathlon. That is always the first Saturday in August, so that will be after the Mount Washington. It will be my next race.
It seems like your motto of your family is keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.
You bet.
You got it. You
I
got
was
it.
wondering, you know, why I'm so crazy about doing it. And then I came to the conclusion on my last hike. It's not the summits, it's not the goal. It's the incentive to stay fit and to stay healthy.
Thank you.
And I so enjoy being able to do things.
We both do.
We both do, yeah.
To our audience, we want to thank the Estes for coming in and sharing a little bit about their life and their time in Plymouth. And my pitch that I'm always saying is keep mementos around the house, but most importantly, keep the pictures. And what do I say on the backs of the pictures? If you can, we're starting to lose pictures today, so we want to save them in different venues. How about that one? And then if there's a story that goes along with it, please share it on the back of the picture, because the future generations will appreciate